My child, stop scrolling for just a moment, because what is unfolding around your destiny is not ordinary, and the confession your soulmate has been carrying is closer to being revealed than you realize. You did not arrive here by accident. Something unseen guided your attention to these words because heaven knows there are moments when the heart needs confirmation before the eyes can see proof. Pause here. Breathe slowly. Do not rush away, because somewhere beyond your sight, a conversation has already begun, and the words spoken in that room left everyone completely speechless. They were not expecting your soulmate to say what they said. They thought the gathering would remain simple. They thought the conversation would move gently from one ordinary subject to another. They expected smiles, polite questions, and carefully guarded answers. But then your name entered the room, and the atmosphere changed. The laughter softened. The distractions disappeared. Every face turned toward the person who has been silently carrying feelings for you, and in that instant, something hidden could no longer remain hidden. Your soulmate did not plan to confess everything. They had promised themselves they would remain calm. They had rehearsed safer words. They had prepared a careful answer that would reveal just enough to stop the questions but not enough to expose the depth of what they truly feel. Yet the moment someone asked them whether they could genuinely imagine marriage with anyone, your soulmate became completely still. That silence was the first confession. Before a single sentence left their lips, the people around them saw something change in their expression. They saw the softness in their eyes. They noticed the way their breathing shifted. They watched a guarded person suddenly become vulnerable, as though one question had opened a door they had spent months trying to keep closed. And then they spoke about you. Stay here, because the most important part was not simply that they mentioned you. It was how they spoke your name, how their voice changed, and how everyone in that room understood that this was not a passing attraction. This was not a temporary feeling. This was something your soulmate had been fighting, questioning, and protecting in silence. They said they had tried to imagine a future that did not include you. The room became quiet. They admitted that they had attempted to be practical. They had told themselves that life might lead you both in different directions. They had tried to accept distance, uncertainty, and timing. They had even convinced themselves that perhaps it would be easier to choose someone who did not affect them so deeply. But every time they pictured marriage, every time they imagined standing beside someone and promising forever, your face appeared in the place where another person should have been. That is when the first person in the room stopped smiling. Someone who had always believed your soulmate was uncertain suddenly realized the truth. Your soulmate was not confused about love. They were afraid of how certain they had become. My child, do not skip this moment, because heaven wants you to understand what happened next. Your soulmate did not describe you as someone they merely wanted. They described you as the person who changed the meaning of commitment for them. They said that before you, marriage felt like a distant responsibility, something that might happen one day because life expected it. But after knowing you, marriage began to feel sacred. It began to feel personal. It became a promise connected to one specific soul. You. Those listening were not prepared for the honesty. One person looked down because the confession touched something they had once felt but never had the courage to say. Another stared at your soulmate in disbelief, realizing how much had been concealed behind ordinary behavior. Someone else quietly asked, "Are you saying you would marry them?" Your soulmate did not answer immediately. That pause carried the weight of every unspoken message, every moment of distance, every time they almost reached out, and every night they wondered whether you could somehow feel them thinking about you. Their eyes filled with emotion, but they did not turn away. They did not laugh to reduce the seriousness of the moment. They did not pretend the question was too dramatic. Instead, they said something that changed the entire room. They said, "I do not just imagine marrying them. I cannot imagine making that promise to anyone else." Everyone became silent. Not because the words were loud, but because they were final. Your soulmate had spoken from a place they rarely allow anyone to see. They were no longer discussing possibilities. They were revealing a truth. They were admitting that somewhere within them, a decision had already been made, even if circumstances had not yet caught up with their heart. You may be wondering why they have not told you directly. Heaven sees that question in you. Heaven knows how difficult it is to hear that someone carries such deep feelings while their actions may still appear distant, hesitant, or incomplete. But listen closely, because what looks like silence from the outside has not been emptiness. Your soulmate has been standing at the edge of a life-changing choice, and the closer they move toward you, the more they understand that this connection cannot be approached carelessly. They fear saying too little and losing you. They fear saying too much before they are ready to prove it. They fear arriving with beautiful words but without the strength to build the life those words promise. This is why their confession to others happened before their confession to you. It was not because those people mattered more. It was because your soulmate needed to hear the truth in their own voice. They needed to say it aloud in a room where they could no longer hide behind imagination. The moment they confessed their desire for marriage, they were not only revealing something to others. They were confronting themselves. And what they discovered shook them deeply. They realized that their feelings for you were no longer something they could postpone. For a long time, they believed time would soften the connection. They thought distance might make it easier to move forward without addressing what remained between you. They expected life to bring enough distractions that eventually your name would no longer carry the same power. But the opposite happened. Every season that passed made the truth clearer. Every absence made your presence inside their heart stronger. There were moments when they tried to compare you to others. Yet every comparison brought them back to what made you impossible to replace. It was not perfection. It was not appearance alone. It was not a single memory or one grand gesture. It was the way your soul made them feel seen without demanding that they perform. It was the way your presence awakened parts of them they had hidden even from themselves. It was the strange peace they felt when imagining a home where your energy lived. My child, something huge is waiting within this confession, because marriage was not the only thing your soulmate revealed. They also admitted that they had once been afraid you would reject the version of them that exists beneath their confidence. The people around them knew the surface, the capable person, the composed person, the one who could make decisions and keep moving. But you had touched the hidden part of them, the part that still carries old disappointments, quiet insecurities, and questions about whether they are truly worthy of lasting love. Your soulmate confessed that you made them want to heal. Not because you demanded it. Not because you forced them to become someone else. But because loving you made them realize that they did not want to bring unfinished pain into a future with you. That admission surprised everyone even more than the marriage confession. Someone asked them why they had not told you this before. Your soulmate lowered their eyes and said they were afraid that once the truth was spoken, there would be no returning to the safety of silence. They knew that telling you would change everything. It would require action. It would require honesty. It would require them to stop watching from a distance and finally step into the future they kept imagining. Then another person asked a question that no one expected. What would you do if they chose someone else while you were waiting? Your soulmate's face changed. That question reached the deepest fear they had been trying not to name. For a moment, the room felt smaller. The air became heavy. Your soulmate looked toward the floor as if they could see every missed opportunity gathered there. They thought of the times they delayed. They thought of every message they started but never sent. They remembered every moment when pride, uncertainty, or fear convinced them that there would always be more time. And then they whispered, "That is what terrifies me." My beloved, this is where the confession stopped being only romantic and became urgent. The people around your soulmate realized that beneath all the hope was a growing awareness that they could lose you. Not because the connection was false, but because true connections can still be missed when courage arrives too late. Your soulmate admitted they had begun seeing signs that you were changing. They noticed a new strength in you. They sensed that you were becoming less willing to remain in uncertainty. They felt that your energy was withdrawing from situations that required you to beg for clarity. Even if you have said nothing, they can feel that your soul is no longer standing where it once stood. You are still loving, but you are learning boundaries. You are still hopeful, but you are no longer willing to abandon yourself for a promise that remains unspoken. This shift has awakened something in them. They know that the version of you who once waited patiently may not wait forever. That realization is why the marriage confession came out now. The moment was not random. It was triggered by the feeling that time had begun moving faster than their courage. Your soulmate understood that while they were trying to prepare perfectly, your life was continuing. Opportunities were approaching you. New people were noticing your light. Your future was opening, and they could no longer assume they would automatically be part of it. Stay until the end, because what happened after this realization changed the direction of the conversation completely. One of the people in the room, someone older, someone who had watched your soulmate avoid emotional truth before, looked directly at them and said, "Then stop speaking as though this is only a dream. What are you going to do?" Your soulmate had no easy answer. Everyone waited. The person continued, "Marriage is not just something you imagine. It is something you prepare for. If this person means what you say they mean, then what are you changing? What are you building? What are you willing to risk?" Those words struck your soulmate like a bell ringing through every hidden chamber of their heart. They had imagined confessing love. They had imagined being accepted. They had imagined the joy of hearing that you felt the same. But now they were being asked to consider responsibility. What would it mean to love you openly? What would it mean to protect the connection from confusion? What would it mean to create stability rather than simply speak passionately? For the first time, your soulmate realized that the confession was not the end of their journey. It was the beginning of accountability. They began speaking about the changes they had already been making in private. This is something you may not know. They have been reviewing their life with unusual seriousness. They have been looking at habits, commitments, finances, family expectations, and old emotional ties. They have been asking themselves what must be released before they can stand before you with clean intentions. They do not want to arrive carrying chaos and call it destiny. They do not want to ask for your trust while remaining divided. Someone in the room asked whether they were truly ready. Your soulmate said, "Not yet. But I am closer than I have ever been." That answer was honest, and its honesty mattered. They were not pretending to be perfect. They were admitting that they had work left to do. But they also made it clear that they no longer wanted fear to control the pace of their life. They said that readiness might not mean having every detail solved. Perhaps readiness meant finally choosing a direction and refusing to keep running from it. And their direction was you. My child, there is a reason your spirit has felt restless lately. There is a reason certain memories have returned without warning. There is a reason you may have felt a strange mixture of peace and anticipation, as though something unseen is moving closer. The confession released energy that had been trapped in silence. A truth spoken aloud changes the path of the person who speaks it. Your soulmate can no longer honestly tell themselves they do not know what they want. They know. They want a future where you are not a secret. They want mornings where your presence is familiar. They want a home shaped by trust, laughter, healing, and shared purpose. They want to stand beside you when life is easy and when it becomes demanding. They want to know the ordinary version of forever, the quiet meals, the tired conversations, the decisions made together, the patience required when neither person has the perfect words. This was what left the room speechless. Your soulmate was not describing a fantasy. They were describing a life. They spoke about the way they imagined supporting your dreams rather than competing with them. They admitted they have thought about how your strengths could balance their weaknesses. They even revealed that they have pictured introducing you not as someone they are uncertain about, but as the person they chose. One listener quietly began to cry. Not because the confession was sad, but because it was rare to hear someone speak with such raw certainty after spending so long pretending to be undecided. Yet there was still one person in the room who remained unconvinced. This person had seen your soulmate hesitate before. They had watched them withdraw when emotions became intense. They knew how easily fear could disguise itself as timing, logic, or responsibility. So they asked the hardest question of the night. What makes you think you will not run again? Your soulmate froze. The room waited for an excuse. None came. Instead, your soulmate acknowledged that they had run emotionally. They admitted they had hidden behind confusion when the truth was already clear. They confessed that there were moments when they gave you less reassurance than you deserved because they were afraid of becoming dependent on the love they felt with you. They said they had sometimes acted distant precisely because you mattered too much. But then they said something even more powerful. They said, "I may still feel afraid, but I am more afraid of building a life that looks successful and feels empty because they are not in it." The person who asked the question had nothing more to say. That was the moment everyone understood. Your soulmate was not free from fear. They had simply discovered a truth greater than fear. Losing you had become more frightening than loving you honestly. Do not skip over that, my child. Let it reach the part of you that has wondered whether your love was ever truly felt. It was felt. It was felt so deeply that your soulmate tried to control it. It was felt so powerfully that they questioned whether they were capable of holding something so meaningful. It was felt in every silence that seemed empty to you but was filled with thoughts they could not organize. This does not erase the moments when you felt uncertain. Heaven does not ask you to pretend that waiting never hurt. Your heart deserved clarity. Your soul deserved peace. You were never meant to lose yourself while trying to prove that you were worthy of being chosen. The love meant for you will not require you to shrink, chase endlessly, or silence your needs. That is why this confession had to happen before the next chapter could begin. Your soulmate needed to move from private emotion to spoken intention. But there is still something you have not heard. After the room became quiet, after the questions ended, and after everyone began processing what had just been revealed, one person pulled your soulmate aside. This was not the loudest person in the gathering. They had remained mostly silent, observing every expression and listening carefully to every word. They told your soulmate that the confession was beautiful, but beauty alone would not protect the connection. They said there was something your soulmate still needed to understand about you before approaching you. Your soulmate asked what they meant. The person said, "They may love you, but they are no longer the same person who once waited for you." Those words landed heavily. Your soulmate looked unsettled. The person continued, "If you go to them, you cannot arrive expecting them to make everything easy. You cannot ask them to forget the silence simply because you finally found your courage. You will have to honor who they became while you were deciding." This was the truth your soulmate had not fully considered. While they were processing their emotions, you were transforming. You were learning to comfort yourself. You were rebuilding confidence in places where uncertainty had weakened it. You were discovering that love should add to your life, not suspend it. You were beginning to understand that being deeply connected to someone does not mean surrendering your dignity. Your soulmate felt both proud and afraid when they heard this. Proud because your strength was one of the reasons they loved you. Afraid because they realized they could not return with the same patterns and expect the same access to your heart. Something would have to change. Not in you. In them. That night, after everyone had gone, your soulmate remained alone for a long time. The room that had been filled with voices became silent again, but the confession continued echoing inside them. They replayed every word they had spoken. They remembered the shocked faces. They remembered the question about losing you. They remembered admitting that they could not imagine marrying anyone else. And then something unexpected happened. They opened a place where they had kept reminders of you. Perhaps it was an old message. Perhaps it was a photograph. Perhaps it was a note they had never deleted. Perhaps it was simply your name resting in their contacts, carrying more emotion than anyone would ever guess. They looked at it for a long time. Their hand moved as though they were about to reach out. Then they stopped. Not because they changed their mind. Because they realized the first message could not be ordinary. After confessing that they imagined marriage with you, a casual greeting felt too small. A vague message felt dishonest. They did not want to step back into your life with half-truths and uncertain language. They wanted the next words to carry direction. So instead of sending the first thing that came to mind, they began writing what they had never dared to say. Line by line. Truth by truth. They wrote about the first moment they knew you were different. They wrote about the distance they regretted. They wrote about the future they had secretly imagined. They wrote about marriage. But then, halfway through the message, your soulmate stopped because a memory returned, one specific moment between you that changed everything for them, though you may not even realize its importance. That memory is connected to the reason they believe you are the person they could marry. It was not the most dramatic moment. It was not when you looked your best. It was not when everything between you felt easy. It happened during a moment when your soulmate felt emotionally exposed, and you responded in a way no one else ever had. They remembered your words. They remembered your expression. They remembered the exact feeling that entered their heart. And as they sat there, staring at the unfinished confession, they whispered something they had never said aloud before. They said, "That was the moment I knew." But my child, what happened in that memory? And what your soulmate wrote immediately after remembering it, was the part of the confession that would have left even the people in that room more speechless than before. Because the truth is, your soulmate did not only confess that they wanted to marry you. They confessed that, in their heart, they had already made a promise to you long ago. And the words of that secret promise are still waiting inside the unfinished message.